Here we go. Well, I'm all good to go. What about you, Scott?
I'm good.
Let's
Let's
go then. Hello, everybody. Today we have Scott Johnson from Dallas in the US. 30 years of helping CEOs and founders break through their barriers. He is a scaling and growth specialist. And today he is here for you. Scott, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Craig.
Well, I am absolutely certain that you are going to add amazing value. We have already had a chat previously, and I'm afraid you left me hanging on something which we're going to have to get back into later on. But can you just tell us a bit about what you've been doing and how you got to this position, please?
Sure. Yeah. We'll go back a minute. I've been an entrepreneur for as long as I can remember. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, but I started my first business when I was 16 and lots of interesting learnings there. But I ended up selling that before I went away to college. And then after school, I spent about 15 years in corporate America, learning a lot about large businesses, how they operate, how structure, leadership, and execution drive results at scale. And while that experience was extremely valuable, I realized I didn't want to manage a big business forever. I wanted to build businesses. I pulled the best practices from corporate America, and for the past 18, 20 years, I've been in the trenches leading early to mid-stage companies, scaling them, turning them around, of course, hitting bumps along the way, and helping founders navigate the chaos of growth, in multiple different ways. I've had several successful exits mixed with a few, mistakes and failures along the way, but I've had over 250 million in capital transactions, lots of learnings throughout all of that. But my passion today is simple. It's helping entrepreneurs along their journeys, helping them build and scale companies that ultimately can run without them.
Well, especially in this post-COVID environment, that's what people want. They want a business that can run without them so that they can literally go on holidays these days. That may not be the usual motivation or mentality for entrepreneurs, but in this Gen Z world we're living in, that's what they want. And they want a business that can run by themselves so that they can go off and do their stuff by themselves. But I want to go back to something that you.
It's interesting, though. I'll just make a comment on that. I think that you hear a lot of that today with people who want to quote unquote buy a business. I hear a lot today of like all these folks out chasing a business, trying to buy a business that runs by itself. And we could go off down a path talking about that and whether or not that's a realistic expectation. Most of these folks have never run a business and they don't quite
No.
understand those dynamics. But with that said, it's amazing how many businesses that I see and I work with that absolutely don't run by themselves. The founder, the business owner, the CEO, whatever the case may be, they are still stuck in the middle of everything. And that's one of the things that we obviously work on when we begin to work with a business is like, hey, let's get this thing to where you're not in the middle of everything. Let's get it to where it is sellable, regardless of whether you want to sell it today or not. You may want to keep this thing and grow it for another 5 to 10 years, but if we can get it into a place to where you're not required for every decision and you're not in the middle of everything happening here, it's a much more enjoyable business to run.
If I would stop doing these podcasts and just give up this whole thing, if people would just listen to that one message, that'd be the whole. That's all that they need to know is what you've just said. That sums up everything, except for probably you missed out on one thing that people still need to know, and that is it's all about the people. So businesses are all about the people, your clients, the people, your suppliers, your vendors, the people in your business itself. But what you said there is just a true gem. It really is. So thank you for that. Now, you said that you've done a couple of successful exits, and you've also done some that didn't quite go. Now, what I tend to find and hear from people is, and you might have come across a gentleman called Jed Morris. Have you heard of Jed at all? I'll introduce you to Jed.
It sounds familiar, but I don't know that I know.
I'll introduce you. He has just written a book on business failures, M&A failures, and there's no names in the book. And the reason for that is, though 83% of A's fail to achieve the desired result within the first 3 years, people don't talk about it. And therefore, it's difficult for others to learn about it.
Mhm.
So are you open to giving us some insight as to what went wrong and how you would do things differently in the future?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, I think you learn, any of us, in my opinion, learn more from the bumps in the road, the failures, and so forth as we do the successes. Yeah, it's just, at least that's how it's been for me and most people I know and talk to. But yeah, I won't say that I've had any just complete disasters where it just wrecked everything. But coming into some businesses where there were high expectations. I had high expectations. Others had high expectations, and they just didn't turn out as well as anyone had hoped or wanted. And I think it came down to, as I just reflect on some of those situations, it was maybe early days being overconfident. And it's part of what I deal with today in terms of some of the CEOs and founders.
Jumping ahead, I was going to bring it back to that in just a few moments. But yes, those lessons that you've experienced, the people that you deal with, you have the advantage of learning from them, being able to take your decades of experience and look at their businesses and understand them better than what they can themselves, and to be able to preempt where their businesses are going to be if they keep going down this track. So you are a coach, a growth coach, a mentor to these businesses. The benefits of your previous experiences, the businesses that you've seen succeed and fail, is just enormous value.
Yeah, it's definitely helpful to, have had some of those bumps in the road and some failures and just know what that feels like. And, part of the requirement that I look for when I'm talking with a CEO in terms of like interviewing each other, is this a potential good fit? One of the things I look for the most is the self-awareness. I mean, do you think you have it all figured out? Or do you realize that, hey, maybe I need another set of eyes on this? Maybe I'm part of the problem, that's holding the company back. Doesn't mean you need to go away necessarily, but I think having some self-awareness to know that, hey, we all need help. I still have a coach. I think we all should have, someone helping us through whatever we're doing in our lives or careers. And so, having that self-awareness is, in my opinion, critically important. If you don't, like, it's just like I would just say, sometimes I'll get an introduction from an investor to a CEO. And just 2 weeks ago, I was speaking with CEO where this was the case. And, we spent 15, 20 minutes on the phone. And I could just sense that, there was just a little bit of friction there. And I just flat out asked him, like, are you open to this? And he said, well, if I'm really candid, I feel like I have a plan and I don't feel like my board has allowed me to execute on this plan. I've only been here, I can't remember, I think it was 14, 15 months, and I need more time to execute on the plan. And I said, hey, I get it. I totally understand that. And I think you should go back and have that conversation with your board and be crystal clear on, where you're at and your expectation. And so, like that, it just doesn't make sense to me if some of that self-awareness, and if you're just not ready or whatever the case may be, we're probably not a good fit.
I think you're spot on, and I brought that subject up recently in a podcast that I did with a gentleman called Scott Taylor. And we discussed the subject of timing for M&As and roll-ups, where the board may say, oh yes, we need to grow via acquisition. Then the worst case is they don't replace the CEO. Best case is they bring a new CEO in to do that, but then they don't listen to the CEO for the timing, the preparedness of the organisation to then take that next step. So you sort of need a CEO in there or someone in there to do that preparedness. Once the board makes the decision to grow via acquisition, you need someone in there to get it right, prepare the business so that they can then go out and do these acquisitions. And it requires a different head to do the preparedness to do the acquisition as well. Would you
Right.
agree?
Yeah, absolutely. So what was his take on why you get this conflict sometimes, this friction? I'm just curious.
His take was that he's never going to get another job because he's now just bagged the board and the CEO.
Yeah.
His take was that we have to get a business organised and ready because you can't take on an acquisition if you can't onboard staff. If
Right.
your finance systems are totally incompatible and you don't have a strategy for integrating them. He actually did one where he took over 6 businesses and ended up with 7 different finance systems.
Yeah.
Because they were good at signing the documents for the purchasing, they were terrible at the integration side of things.
Yeah, if you're creating a platform where you're going to build this kind of scenario, you need to almost look at it as if you're building a franchise model, where I'm going to replicate this thing, all over the city, the state, the country, whatever the case may be, and get all those things, all those systems, all the processes, everything in place as if I'm handing this off to someone else. I think if you leverage that mindset and put the things in place that would allow you to do that, to some extent, you're probably then ready to start layering some things on top of it.
To some extent, that was perfect because your plans are never going to be perfect. You need something in place, and then there will be tweaking and adapting in there to make it work. Now, you said something when we first met, and I sort of let you off the hook when we were chatting about this, but I really want to put you under pressure now. You said business advisory, there are just some simple issues that need to be addressed. And you said there were 5 of those. And I look at my notes there, Scott, and I've got nothing from 1 to 5. Come on, give us something, will you? What have you?
Yeah, there's 5 business growth principles. I leverage in many cases a business operating system called Summit OS, and it's built on this as well. But these are pretty common across many types of approaches. And you said one of them earlier is people, right? It's all about getting there's several aspects of people. Certainly, getting the right people on the bus, as someone once said. But how do you hire
The wrong people off.
and getting the wrong people off the bus? 100%. Yeah, but how do you hire these people? How do you create the right structure and accountability? How do we develop people? How do we coach them either up or out? All those things. Do you have a set of core values in place that allow you to have that consistency? You can get the best and brightest at a certain role within the company, but if they don't have the core values of the broader team, none of that skill set or experience matters. So people being number 1. 2 being purpose. Purpose under this category, I would talk about vision. Like where are we going with this company? What does the future look like? And you can talk about vision in 3, 5, 10 years, whatever you're comfortable with, but you need to have a clear vision and then a why. Why does it matter? Why does like I'm a book company. I publish books. Well, why does that matter in the world? If you don't have a clear vision and a why and get people aligned around that, you just have people going in many different directions. And when you do get that right, you get so much more out of people. If I'm here because I believe in what you're trying to accomplish and why that matters to the world, like that's how you get people to go above and beyond. It's not like I need to pay you more. It's like I believe in this vision and why it matters to the world. Performance. So we have a clear vision. We have people aligned around that. We have the right people. How do we know if we are winning the day, the week, the month, the quarter, the year? So do we have metrics? Do we have objectives, KPIs, all those things? And are we leveraging that sort of data to make decisions? Do we run good meetings? Do we prioritize issues in a way that we can knock them down, check them off the list? Things like that under performance. Playbooks. The process takes pressure off people. We don't need people running around with everything in their head. And we need playbooks that allow everything that we do to be repeatable, whether that is how we deliver our goods or services, whether that's how we onboard a new person. Everything should be documented in playbooks and be ingrained. And then we constantly refine those. And last and certainly not least is profit. Do we understand where we should be, where our company and our industry and our segment, whatever, what is the benchmark for profitability for companies like us? And are we constantly working to engineer ways to improve profitability and of course sustain? So those are the big 5 business growth principles that I think are foundational. And what I have learned over the years from big corporate Fortune 500 companies all the way to earlier stage companies, regardless of how many zeros you put behind the top line number of the business, when things start to break down, you can usually track them back. There's more complexity in the larger businesses, but at some level, you're going to track issues back to one of these areas. It's been my experience.
Well, I'm really glad that I put the screws on you for that, because that was incredible value, Scott. That really was. And I just said that was wonderful. Thank you for that. Now, there was something else that I wanted to talk to you about. Private equity without private equity. What does that say to you?
Yeah, I do some work with private equities. Yeah, I don't want this to come across as there's not a place and time for private equity. I think there is certainly. But in many cases, what this means is you don't need a private equity firm to build a valuable self-managing business. Some of the things we've already spoken about. And back to the note earlier, like every business should be sellable. But if you think about private equity, what does private equity do? I mean, certainly if you need some cash and it's your only way to get growth capital. I understand that. But so many people take on private equity maybe too early. Like what do they do when they come in? They're going to tell you to do some of the things I just mentioned. They're going to tell you to hire and develop the best people, including leadership.
Why wouldn't they tell you to do what you just spoke about?
Of course. Yeah, I mean that's what they do. They have playbooks, they have operating partners, they have come in. They're going to tell you to
experience
and execute strategic planning. They're going to tell you to streamline your processes and build repeatability. They're going to tell you to track KPIs with dashboards and metrics. Expand your products and services or regions, depending on what your business is. Increase reoccurring revenue. That's what they're going to do. Why not do it on your own? I mean, this is not an impossible task. And let's just say you still need the private equity capital maybe for growth purposes. Well, you're going to be in a much better place to negotiate that and do that after you have put some of these things in place. So why wait for a buyer to tell you what to fix? That's the way we need to think about it. Let's just go ahead and capture that value now and keep the upside for ourselves. Private equity, they have investors, and those investors want 20% on their money, and then private equity wants to make money. And so they're going to take a big bite of equity out of your company. So anyway, that's where I was coming from with that. Does that make sense? How does that land with you?
Awesome. Thank you for ruining my business. I appreciate that. No, but let me answer your question. Why not go and do that yourself? And the reason that these people or these businesses are not doing it themselves is that they don't have the experience. They're not trained in business growth and business development. They don't know how to read a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement correctly for growth. They know how to read it for income, for private income, but they don't know how to read it and develop it for business growth and to make it prepared for sale and ready for sale at any stage. That's
Right.
why they don't do any of this. And it's because they don't have a coach. They don't have someone to guide them like yourself to go through and do this.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, it's like a lot of things. I mean, if you haven't been there, if you haven't done it, you may not know. You don't even know what you don't know, right? But the good news is when it comes to this particular topic, there's a gazillion people who've been through it. Like this is not new stuff for so many people. So there's lots of people like me running around out there that have been through it and are interested in helping other entrepreneurs. A big reason why I do what I do is because I do want to give back. I do want to help other people. I was a first at all these things and I had people around me to help me. And like I think that's the bottom line is it's okay not to have been down this path before. Just go find somebody who has and pull them in and walk over all the same broken glass that they walked over. Like that's what I always try to do is avoid. Like I
Choose to
for a
hide
lot
the
of
scars.
exactly. Yeah. So that's it. I mean, none of this is rocket science. None of these things we're talking about. The books were written decades ago. You can go back and read, in my opinion, all the brightest of business books were written a long time ago. All the books that come out now, all they're doing is rewriting the same books, the Collins, you can go through a list of people. None of this stuff is new. And you just spend a little time, find someone to assist you, and it's pretty simple stuff, really.
I'll give you a new book then. Since none of
Okay.
this stuff is new, I'll give you a new one. J.T. Fox, Business is War, came out this year,
Okay.
and it is new. J.T. Fox with a double X. Business is
Okay.
War. So
Thank
there you
you.
go.
That one is not, you can't see, but I have books all around, and that one's not one of the ones I've read. I don't think I've even
Get
heard
back
that.
to me on that one then. Okay.
Okay. Will do.
Now, we've got about 6 or 7 minutes left, and I'm going to ask a question which is probably going to make this the shortest podcast I've done because you're going to hang up on me, okay? So here we go. Done the thumb screws, now I'm going to hit you with the hard one. Are you the smartest person in the world, or are you just well connected and experienced?
This is like the easiest question you've asked. I am definitely not the smartest person in the room, nor am I the smartest person. I'm sorry, I'm not the smartest person in the world, and I'm not the smartest person in the world room, and I don't need to be. Like I think there's a couple of things. One, having some connections from time to time is certainly helpful. But if I just leverage all of the experience for the last many decades, all the books that were written a long time ago, and be a good facilitator, help these businesses, help the CEO and the management team. I'll come on site and facilitate some of their quarterly meetings or their annual planning so that they can really work on the business. It's hard to be a facilitator and actually be doing the work. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room to do that, right? And there's tools and frameworks. Again, there's so many things out there. So if you're a good facilitator, you have some experience. I will say this, that if you have not been an operator, if you have not been in the seat, I don't know how you do this work, frankly. And so that is, I wouldn't call that smarts. It's just like you've had to have been there. You've had to have the sleepless nights. You've had to think about how you're going to make payroll if you don't get the next raise done or whatever. And there's lots of other things like that. So that's the key is leverage all the information that's available, all the tools, all the frameworks, have been in the seat and show up and be a good facilitator, create good conversation, challenge CEOs, have the hard conversation, be present in the conversation. That's what it takes, stuff like that. IQ and smartest person in the world and in the room is not required. Lucky for me.
Can I add one more thing into that, please? When you
Absolutely.
do go into that room, don't think you're the smartest person either. Go in with an open mind, because
Agree.
I learn things every single day, and I've been doing this for decades now. And people say, oh, you should learn something new every day. Well, I must be the dumbest person in the world because I learn so much every day.
Agreed. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I have a coach. I am constantly working on. I mean, if you're not learning, whatever you're doing with your time, if you're not constantly challenging yourself and learning, it's just not a lot of fun, in my opinion. Like that's part of the enjoyment is, you're doing good work and you're learning things along the way. So I absolutely agree with you. I think that's
But even if you do know things, having a coach is different. For example, last week I was chatting with my coach and really peeved me off, because what I don't like about coaches is they throw your own words back at you. Now, I know that they're my words that you're saying back at me, but sometimes you need someone to do that for you so that you can get it through your head.
sounds very familiar to me. Yes.
So it's not just me.
not, not at all. No, not at all.
Okay. Now, there was something else over here you've done a lot in the health sector as well. What can you tell us about that? How do you see the health sector progressing from a business model, merger and acquisition, roll up, technology perspective?
Yeah, we could probably do an entire separate podcast on this. I started my career in corporate America, and one of the things I always talk to people trying to build businesses in healthcare is there's a reason why none of the big Fortune 100 companies in the US at least have been successful in healthcare. Now there's S&P 500 companies that were healthcare companies and then they made their way to the S&P 500. But like I started my career with Hewlett Packard, and all the big companies like HP and IBM, and the list goes on, none of them have had a meaningful impact in healthcare. And it's not because they don't have the financial wherewithal. It's not because they don't have smart people. It's because in the US, this thing we call healthcare, it's a very complicated system. And it has taken decades to build this thing. And it is full of immovable walls. There's things that are built in healthcare that people make money on every single day.
I think we need Miley Cyrus in there to knock a few of those walls down.
It'd be great. And so smart people come in and they just say, hey, that wall, we'll just go around that wall and, like just comment. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out like things are inefficient. And if we just did this and that, but you will spend a lifetime trying to knock that wall down or go around that. And so it's complicated. I mean, it really is. That doesn't mean we shouldn't continue to try, but it's just complicated. So you need to know, if you're going to try to disrupt healthcare, you need to know a little bit about the system that has taken decades to build. You need to know what is not, unless something major changes, don't try to move that wall. There's plenty of other things we can work on. So yeah, I don't know. In the last few seconds here of a podcast, I don't know what else I could say. So the latest, big company that's trying to disrupt is Amazon. We'll see. We'll see what they do. They're like many others before them. They appear to be making some progress. You never really know what's happening as it relates to how much money are they losing every day in their
I think they can afford it.
along the path, and how long are they going to, will they be willing to lose that money if that's the case? So we'll see. But yeah, happy to maybe explore that another time with you, because that's a long and deep conversation all on its own. Hey, I'm cheering everyone on. I mean, healthcare is, it's the biggest spend here in the US, and we need to fix it. There's just no question about it. So I'm cheering them on, but it's complicated.
Well, I've been doing healthcare for quite a while myself, and yes, I can see where you're coming from, and I think there might be even a little bit of jadedness there in your tone, if I read into that a bit.
Hey, so some of those walls have, I've got some scars right here on the forehead. So yeah, for sure.
It is. Scott, this has been brilliant. I think we've covered quite a few topics here that should gain people's interest, and they should be able to reach out to you and get more information on these. Is there anything else that you would like to add in to close this off?
No, it's been great, Craig. I appreciate the opportunity. And yeah, you can reach me at growthpeakadvisors.com. And that's been fun. And thanks for having me.
Been an absolute pleasure. I just love the way that you were able to give so much here. So yes, all of your details will be at the end of this. So we'll make sure we get those out to people as well. So thank you very much, Scott, for your time. Really appreciate it. And we might have to come back and have a chat with healthcare. Whether we record it or not could be a whole different subject.
Let's do it. I'm game.
I've got this one recording that a podcast that I did with this guy, and we haven't been game to release it. It was just
too far out there.
There was so many grenades thrown into this conversation, and yeah, we just haven't been game to release it yet. Admittedly, the guy that I did it with was German, so he'll probably just say, no speakers the English. Was that correct German that I just spoke there? I'm not sure.
You got me.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and look forward to catching up again, Scott.
Yeah, sounds good, Craig. Take care.